Hello, and welcome to A Gift of Watercolor Magic. My name is Rebecca Zadibble, otherwise known as Rebecca Z Artist, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram or on my website, RebeccaZArtist.com. I'm here today with a friend and really wonderful instructor, Kathie George. Kathie is known for her friendly and her informative and funny classes. I really have always enjoyed my time spent with her there, and I know you will too. She's been a popular workshop instructor for over 30 years. It all began back when her husband Michael signed her up for a watercolor class, like a college art class, right? And I think it was a surprise. She spent every moment she can since then, I think, painting. And she's best known for her watercolor batiks on rice paper. And if you haven't seen that technique, it is just beautiful. And Kathie is a true master. But she also enjoys painting in many different media, watercolor among them, but also acrylic, very frequently acrylic. Today, she's actually going to be bringing us a primarily watercolor lesson with just a little bit of mixed media involved in it. She says that working across media allows her to stay fresh and keep herself from getting bored. Kathie's award-winning work can be found in corporate and private collections in the US and abroad. She's twice been a finalist in the Artist Magazine art competition, and she's authored 4 Watercolor Made Easy books. And this is really fun. She leads art journey workshops overseas. Next year, she has 7 trips planned, and they're going to such wonderful destinations like France, Guatemala, Ireland, Morocco, and Spain. And so if you're at all interested in doing that sort of thing, you might want to check out what Kathie has planned. Today, she's going to be teaching a watercolor mixed media butterflies lesson. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have in store for us, Kathie. Hi.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. Is it my turn? Should I?
It is. You can just take right over. I know everyone's really excited to see what you have in store for us.
Okay. Well, our time to paint together today is rather limited. So I thought, because of the holiday season, it might be good to just do something really fun and easy. And hopefully after watching this, you'll be able to just sit down and do this project yourself in your own way at home. So with that in mind, well, I don't know, can you see those butterflies back there?
Yeah, we can see them. They're
okay, I can hold them a little closer, but you're gonna see close up. Okay, here's one. And every time I do something like this, it looks different. And this technique you can use with any subject, not just butterflies. I just happened to have that one done. And when you called and said, what can we do? I thought, well, that might be a good piece.
They're beautiful.
So the first thing, the way that I like to start with this is to put my design onto my watercolor paper in a different way than I normally would with a regular watercolor. The paper I'm going to use today is 140-pound cold pressed. I'm using the new Winsor Newton paper, but you know, any paper will do. I am going to use a little squeeze bottle, okay? And all of the instructions on how to use this and what it is and where you can get it out, I've put a PDF together for you. But anyway, this little bottle, it looks like this. It's got a needle on it, a needle tip. And I really like to use this to outline the design I'm putting on my paper because it leaves this little raised edge. It almost works like a little dam when you're putting on the color. And anyway, it's really fun to work with. So when you are using this, I use acrylic. And the 2 colors that I've used for this neutral kind of color is, these are golden fluid acrylics, but you can use any acrylic that you have. This is raw sienna and a little bit of Titan buff, which is just a beige color. And you put it in to the bottle. And I don't fill the whole thing up. I just put, you know, a little bit in, maybe a third of the way. Now, usually when you start to use this and squeeze it out, it's a little tiny bit too thick. And how do you tell? Well, if you're using this to apply your design and your hand is getting a cramp in it, then you know it's a little bit too stiff. So unscrew the top and add like 1 drop of water. Okay, 1 drop can really thin it out. So 1, maybe 2 drops, and then you're going to try it again. Let me show you exactly what this looks like. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so if you want to, you could just draw your own design on your paper, of course, and use your needle bottle, or you could just go right at it with your needle bottle onto your paper. But usually I like to work out my design ahead of time. And here is the paper where I worked out one of the butterflies, and I'm just going to give you a little demo of how to use this needle bottle. This is my paper on top, and this is the light box. So to begin with, I like to give this a little squeeze on some to see how that's gonna come out. So you want it to come out easily, but you don't want it to just everywhere so that you can't tell what you're doing. All right, so here we go. Just prop your hand on the table. See, real easy. And it comes out and you can just draw with this, and really it doesn't matter if it's perfect or any of that. So it's quite easy to put this on with the bottle. Now, another important thing that you have to know is how to clean this. Okay, so unscrew that top, and I take this and I run it underneath the faucet to get all of that out. And then I would have another bottle, just water in it. Screw that on top. Okay, and then you can just squeeze it out like that.
That's a great idea.
So it's easy to keep that clean. And they have these little plastic top things to put on them. However, what I like to do when I store it is to take a little piece of plastic like that and put it on top before I screw the lid on. Okay, that keeps that paint from running back into that tip. Okay, I'm going to put that in the water right now. And let me remove this light box. And we're ready to start painting. All right. So I've got it already on the paper. Ta-da-da-da. Got it all ready to go, like that. And when I was doing this other one, and I got about halfway done with it, and I thought this was just the coolest looking thing. So I stopped right there. I think maybe I'll call it Butterfly Meets the Windshield. Just kidding. Okay. So here we go. I've got this design on, and you wait till it's totally dry. All right, so now we want to wet the paper. Okay, so to wet the paper, I use a sea sponge and some clean water. And this is just a non-absorbent board of some type. You know, you can use masonite, gator board. This is sign board that they used to make signs out of. Do you know what that's called, Rebecca?
I don't remember. It's not poster board, is it?
No, it's not, because poster board is absorbent, but this is a
Yeah.
plastic kind of fluted board, and I really love it because it's light as a feather and much less expensive than Gator board is. So I use this quite a bit. All right, so what I'm going to do is wet this on the back first. Some clean water. And you want to make sure and get the entire thing nice and wet all the way out to the edges. And sometimes I'll even let this, sit for a minute or two, depending on how big the piece is and how much painting I'm going to do on it before I want it to dry. For this, I'm going to keep it simple for us. Okay, so you can see it's nice and shiny everywhere. Can you
Yep, we can see that.
see it? All right, no dry spots. I'm just going to flip it over. And what this does is it just sticks it down to that board and keeps it really nice and flat. That is assuming that you don't have any bubbles under here. So when I put the water on top, I'm going to start in the center and work my way out.
Now that paint is dry, right? I mean,
Totally dry, yes. And because it's acrylic, if you haven't ever used acrylic, it dries pretty quickly. You could go have some lunch or put some laundry in the wash and come back and it'll be ready to go. Okay, so what I'm looking for is just to make sure I have all the edges and there's no bubbles. All right, so if you see it now, how shiny it is, that is too shiny. We want to wait until it is just about lost that shine or just lost the shine before we actually paint on it. Because there's so much water right now with that amount of shine that if I put paint on there, it's just going to explode. So the secret is to just look at it, and once it has just lost the shine, and don't worry, you'll be able to tell it. It'll happen. And if it doesn't happen by the time I finish explaining things, I'll blot it a little bit so we can get started. So while we're waiting for that, let's talk about the colors that we want to use in this piece. So I would recommend that first of all, you think about what colors come to mind when you think of painting your butterflies. So think of that. What colors am I going to do for my butterflies? So I personally am thinking maybe I will do oranges or reds or something bright and warm. Okay, so once you have that color in mind, that will tell you what your choice might be for the background. So if you're using something warm for your butterflies, for the background, cool colors might be a wonderful choice. Okay, so when we are choosing our cool colors, what you want to do is to choose, well, cool colors, blues, greens, violet perhaps. When you're choosing them, you don't want to pick like 10 different colors. If you're in blue ranges or greens or whatever, fine, but maybe pick more than 1, 2, possibly 3. Okay, so you can change your color as you go. We don't want to have just one simple color in there. That's boring and kind of lifeless. So we're going to pick more than one color. If you look at my palette here, you can see I've got all my cools lined up over here on this side. So I could kind of go down the line if I chose. But the main thing is I know that I'm going to use those cool colors in the background, and I'm killing some time so we can, let's take a look. Okay, it's still pretty shiny, so I'm going to cheat and see if I can get rid of a little bit of that. Okay, I think we're probably pretty good to go now. So let's use kind of a big brush. I like to use a flat brush. I've always kind of been a flat brush kind of girl. Get rid of this bottle here. Okay, so with this acrylic, you can see really well where those butterflies are. It's going to be perfectly all right if the color oozes onto those butterflies a little bit, but we don't want it to overtake the whole thing. You want to leave a lot of white still. So let's see here. I think I'm going to start off with, that is a little bit of Windsor blue. And maybe cobalt. That's cobalt turquoise. It's a little bit opaque, but I think it'll look nice. Let's try it. All right, so the paper already has water on it. So that means when you pick this color up in your brush, you don't want to have it full to the max with color. So I dry my brush out and just pick up a little bit of this, and I'm just going to drop the color on. Okay, I'm dropping that color on because I don't want it to just explode everywhere. And I don't want those colors to really mix a lot. I want them to ooze into each other, but I don't want them to be totally. I'm going to put the head of that on a little bit of angle, so maybe I'll get just a little bit of a run here. Now, if your paper should begin to dry when you're doing this, it's okay to give it a little spritz with a spray bottle. Hard to talk and paint at the same time sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So you're doing your background now.
Yes, so I'm painting the background. I want some of this color to ooze a little bit onto the butterflies, but I don't want it to overtake them. I want to leave still a lot of white paper. Add a tiny bit of purple up there just for the heck of it. Now see, when I'm doing this, I'm just laying it on. I'm not taking my brush and using a motion like this, like a stroke, or it's going to blend them all together. So you can see there's still a lot of wetness there. All right, let's go down here. Now remember that watercolor dries lighter, so don't be afraid to put a little bit of pigment on there. I love painting on a surface like this. It feels so smooth when you have it adhered to that board like that. Do you do that in your painting, Rebecca?
I do. I really love having a super wet piece of paper as a beginning too. It just gives you such soft color mixes.
A little teeny bubble under there. I like it. Now notice I'm not playing around back up here where I was. Just leaving well enough alone. Let it do its own thing. And before I finish this, I would like to have just a little bit of warm color in the background as well. Wonder about. So as soon as I get everything filled in here, uh-oh, forgot one right there. So now I'd like to have a little bit of warm on there. So I think I'm going to take some orange. Call me crazy. But I think I'd like to spatter just a little orange. Not going to go too crazy, just a little bit, because we want to have a little warm in the background, and we will also have a little cool on our butterflies. Maybe a wee bit more. Okay. She says, and she keeps spattering. You know, spattering is a lot of fun, so it's hard to make yourself stop sometimes.
It is.
Okay, so there we have it. And I'm just checking to make sure all the little places are filled in. But see how these little, like look at this, even down in here, all of that area, how that the outlining of the acrylic really makes some, I'm dabbing a little orange in there, kind of just makes interesting little places. I'm kind of playing now. Don't you do this. Better just leave it alone. But I'm just enjoying what's happening like right there. Lovely. And how the outlining stops it. And just like over here too, it's running in and out of some of that, not the rest. Okay. So at this point, what we would want to do is to let this dry completely. A lot of times you could keep on and keep painting if you want to, but since this is within a sort of a time limit, I've kind of done one ahead, and I want to go on so we can show you how to actually develop the painting rather than watching paint dry. So
Love those patterns though that you've got in those butterflies. I think it's going to be beautiful to watch.
I do too. I think it's really going to be lovely. Okay, so I'm also getting the extra away from the edge. You know, that can cause some water spots around the edge there. All right, so let's put this one over here. And here is one I did earlier. You can see that I kind of went a little wild with my spatters here. Now this is actually a little bit of acrylic that I use. You know, actually that's a fib. It's actually latex, which is house paint, like this kind of a thing. Oh. Good old Benjamin Moore. Yes. So, and that will kind of come out when you use it in these little wormy kind of lines. So it's kind of fun to experiment with that. So here we are. This is nice and dry. So I managed to leave quite a bit of white in this one. And now we can decide, do we want to leave the background just as it is? Well, I'm looking at this butterfly wing and I see where the background color has oozed over onto the bottom of it. So I know from a distance, I'm not going to be able to see the bottom of that wing. So I can paint in that entire butterfly wing, or I could paint in the background a little bit darker around it. I could use a different color or just make a darker value, and then the wing would show up. So I have those two choices. Well, most of the time, what I personally like to do is I like to put in some shapes into the background, and then I like to paint negatively or in between those shapes. Okay, so that adds darker color to make the wing show up, but it also leaves a lot of the background areas that I really love still in there. So let me show you one. So here's one, for instance, it kind of demonstrates this point. Okay, look at here. This was the background color, and you can see where it ran all the way up in here and it went way up in there. Oh, and look at all those, really cool. All of that happened with the initial washes. So if you can imagine this color running straight through, you wouldn't be able to tell where that wing is, but the second that I put that bright red in there, that made that pop out. But at the same time, well, these are the shapes that I drew in. Okay, they're kind of an abstracted leaf shape. And that shape allowed me to keep some of this really funky, cool background stuff that's going on here, which I really like, because I think if I covered that up, I'm losing something. So that's why sometimes I like to keep these shapes in there. Now, what kind of shapes could you do? Well, you could do something realistic that would make sense to you, like leaf shapes or flower shapes. You could do other butterfly shapes layered back in here. Or you could do abstracted shapes. You know, it just depends what kind of work you like to do, what kind of things you enjoy. So instead of using a liner bottle for this, I will use a crayon. Okay, a crayon is wax and it's going to work as a resist as well. So I can come in here and use a crayon. And the color doesn't really matter a lot because when you're painting, the spaces between, you're really going to cover up some of that crayon line. And of course, if I put this design on here and I decide that I don't like it, I can change it when I paint. I really like some of this. And then maybe I'll do a little bit over here too, so we can see how it travels through.
So are you thinking more like leaves for these shapes?
Yeah, I'm just kind of doing an abstracted leaf shape to kind of keep it along the same lines as the other one. Hopefully then it won't be as confusing. So you can also develop these shapes quite a bit more than this, which I'll talk about in a moment. But for now, once I have these shapes on here, then I can come in and decide what color I'm going to do that. Well, I'm thinking my butterflies could be colors maybe like this. So perhaps I'll do something neutral back here, like black maybe. I could, and then when I'm thinking black, again, I want to think more than one color in that. So I've got neutral tint on my watercolor palette. So I'll probably use neutral tint. Neutral tint is just like a black. It has a little bit of a violet cast to it. That's all that is. So I might use that. I could use violets. I could use some navy blue of some kind. But I want to, even though I'm filling in this space and it's a small space, I want to change the color as I go. And I want to have a lot of pigment in here because I want it to be very opaque. I don't want that color to be wimpy. I want it to be opaque. So make a safe spot here.
Kathie, I don't use neutral tint. Is that an opaque color?
No, no, it's not. And let me show you here. That's what it looks like, actually. So it's like black with just a slight violet cast to it. Here's Payne's Gray. And this, of course, is Winsor Newton's Payne's Gray, which has that lovely blue tint to it, which is so good for mixing greens. You know, if you do plein air or whatever, it's really a great combination to mix this with some yellows for some great greens. You can see the difference in how that's really a lovely color. Okay.
It's warmer, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is. Okay. Now, I would even have no problem with using acrylic back here. I guess you can tell I'm not a purist. Okay, no matter what I do, even my regular, well, there are times when I stick to that. But in general, I like to use anything that I need to use to get me where I want to go with my painting. And I really enjoy the process of using all that different stuff. I don't know, something, maybe it goes back to kindergarten or something, but.
Whatever works, right?
Yeah, whatever works. And half of the fun is figuring out what will work as well. So there's the neutral tint, and you can see that I'm putting it on quite dark and thick and rich. It's a bit of violet going in and back to neutral tint. Now there's this, I'm watching for the edge of those butterfly wings. I don't want to cover over those. You can already see what that little spot of dark does. It just makes all the difference in the world between that and when you have a little bit of that dark in there. Okay, so over here now, I'm going along the edge of that wing. I'm seeing this really cool piece of yellow, that sienna color coming up there, and I'm wondering, do I want to cover that up or go around it? Because I like it, but it still might be too much. Let's see, I'll start and go around it first, and then we'll see. Now, I'm back. This is the extra blue, that's Winsor blue, so I've switched from the neutral tint to some Winsor blue, and then I'll go back to the neutral tint. So switching that color as you go, I think is important. Not so much in this case where it's all dark, but especially if you have lighter colors that really show up. Okay, I want to get enough of this on here for you to be able to see where the effect of it and where we're going. There's another one of those yellow. I kind of like. I don't know. Do you think that's too much leaving the whole thing, Rebecca, or do you think I should cover it? Hard to tell, maybe too soon.
Does that latex paint act as a resist at all, or?
Yeah, it does. It's mostly just the fact that it is a raised edge. But it kicks it back just a wee bit. Of course, not when it is thick like this. It won't. You could paint over it and cover it. So if you got that somewhere, sometimes the worst part about doing that is getting your hand in it. You have to, work your way around.
Yeah.
But it really is.
I like those lines. I had thought I was speaking, but I was actually muted earlier when.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I like those lines. I think they add some abstraction to the background.
I think so too. And if you, when you look, you see that where those, that little bit of latex dropped onto the watercolor, it kind of pushed the watercolor away. So there's like a little bit of light next to it even. It's just kind of a good, kind of a fun little thing there. Okay, a little bit more.
It's amazing what dark darks will do to a painting. They just pop.
I know. They're so important. And in this case, it's kind of easy to get them dark enough where, you know, for painting something else, a still life or a landscape or whatever it is, we tend to sneak up on it sometimes and not get it dark enough.
Yeah, that is, it's sometimes the fault of a lot of watercolors, I think, is to just be a little wimpy in the values.
Yeah, I've had my wimpy stage, for sure. But you know, when you're doing that and you have to paint something over 14 times to get it dark enough, eventually you learn your lesson and say, boy, I get tired of doing that, and you get a little braver. But you know, it takes, when you're learning, it takes time to learn all of that.
There's
And
so
people
much,
can tell you, but you have to sometimes learn on your own.
that is so true.
Okay, so you can hopefully see, I'm doing just a little bit more. Let's do, okay. All right, so once I get enough of this in here, then the next step will be to go ahead and put some color on the butterflies. All right, so as I was talking about before too, you can decide how much detail you want to put on any of the shapes that you're doing. For example, here's a couple of them. Look at how different every one of these is, like as different as night and day. So you can see here that I've put lots of line work with the liner bottle in the middle of all these leaf shapes, making them look a little bit more like leaves, but they're still abstracted. And then I could even come in here and I could paint some color in that. So here again, this is a different color scheme altogether, but you can see where I'm doing the same thing. I'm painting negatively behind these shapes, okay? And then I'll continue right over and do the same thing all around. And then you can decide if you wanted to come in here and do additional color.
Kathie, did you add those lines in after you put the background in or before you put the background in?
On this particular one, well, you could do it either way. So you could start off and you could do your background just like this. This is the original one that we did. It's still cooking. And then you could go ahead and do your background shape and your lines, or you could do it all right from the get-go which is what I did with this, with that one. I put it all in right from the beginning, you know, because I knew I wanted it in there. So either way, but usually, you know, like this one, I think my hand got really tired after I did the butterflies, so I decided to wait and do the rest at another time. Okay, so you see the, and you know, the thing about doing these Zoom things is I can't say, does anybody have any questions or not understand this? But it's just simple negative painting, and you can make it as plain. You don't even have to do any of this. You could work just butterflies and go from there. All right. So now, when we start on the butterflies, you want to use really clean color, and preferably some clean water. Let's see here. Which I don't seem to have. Okay. All righty, so nice, clean, transparent colors now. And this is just a real easy matter of choosing the colors you want and putting them on there. And it's all for you to decide. There's no rules or anything about where to put the color or how much color, any of that. But the same way as we did with the background, it's better if you pick 2 or 3 analogous colors and then move along, changing the color as you go. So for instance, let's maybe start. Okay, so this is a red orange. And I'm just simple painting on dry paper. And then you can move along and pick up the next color. Set your brush in right where you ended up, where you stopped with the first.
And those lines help keep the color from going too crazy, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do, but they also add like a little interest to it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you know, it's up to you how bright or light or how much white you want to keep. Okay. Okay, so you can see right away, just because of the warm, that's going to push it forward. And it's just a matter of moving along and finishing out your butterflies, however you want to do them. Okay.
Do you generally make an effort to keep things kind of symmetrical color-wise or not?
No. I mean, that again is personal taste. Like if you, the one that's in the back here is not symmetrical at all, really. But you know, most butterflies are. So that would drive a lot of people nuts because they would want to have them exactly the same. But my preference, what I really love to do is something like this more where I try to leave as much of the background happenings as I can and touch it as little as I have to just make it look like butterflies and leave, you know, because your mind will tell you, put a little bit of suggestion there and your mind says, oh, those are butterflies. You know, they don't have to be perfectly rendered or symmetrical and that sort of thing. Okay, so then there's one other thing that you can do to this to make the butterflies separate from the background. And let me show you on one of these. Let's see here. Okay, this is as good as any. Okay, so when you have these, sometimes they won't separate very well from the background, like for instance, right here. Okay, now this isn't finished, of course, but still I can make that separate by floating in a little bit of color next to that edge. I'm going to side load the brush. And by that, I mean, I am going to mix a little bit of color here. What should we use? Let's use maybe a little bit of blue. Okay, so I'm pulling my blue out and just getting kind of a medium value. I'm going to rinse the color out of the brush and dry it, and I'm going to pick up some color just right on the tip on one side, and I kind of work it like that. So when I stroke it onto paper, see how it's automatically blends itself. So again, rinse the brush and wipe it. I can pick up color on one side and kind of stroke the brush a little bit so that I will have that soft blended edge. And then I can come right along here. See?
And it pops.
And that pushes that right back where it belongs. Do a little bit more up here so you can see it a little better. There, see how that works? So the same way here, maybe I would use a different color. Okay. And then that pushes your butterflies out. You can do it all around the whole thing or like a hit and miss, you know, lost and found edges, that kind of thing.
Really nice. I like that brush technique.
And that's it. Simple and fast, and hopefully something that sounds fun that you might like to try, or try a liner bottle with one of, and you can use this on any subject. It's beautiful with flowers. Do your big, you know, white flowers with the liner bottle, and then, you know, put in your color and float it in the background, just like we did, but with just a different subject.
What fun. That is really, really a nice lesson talking about negative painting, and also the trick with the liner bottle. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful lesson. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, that was just great. I look forward to giving that a try myself. And I know that everyone who's watching probably feels the same. Kathie, what's coming up for you in January and in the new year? What do you have going on that people need to know about?
Gosh, well, right now I have we're putting together a new website by the time this comes out, I'm not sure if it will be up yet or not, but I'm going to have quite a few online classes, as is everyone, it seems now with the COVID, we're kind of switching over, and I have some really interesting things planned for that. And of course, traveling next year, if that happens, that's going to take up a lot of time for next year. But yeah, teaching and all
Well,
that.
with 7 trips, you probably are not going to have much time.
Well, normally I don't do that many, but the ones that were canceled from this year have been rescheduled. So normally it's about 3 trips a year, but this is going to be so.
Yeah,
It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
I hope that all of that turns out for you. I really do. I think that's going to be tremendous for everybody who's able to go. When you can go to a beautiful place and paint at the same time, it is such.
Well, you do that. You all have some wonderful things as well. And
well, yeah, hopefully we'll be going to Venice next year in fall.
I went last year, and Venice is amazing. When are you going?
In October next year of 2021. So we're
time to go.
We're really, really hoping. I love going there at that time of the year because it's not too hot, and hopefully during this whole COVID thing, I'm hoping that maybe the city will be a little less congested than in years past.
It would be the perfect time to go.
Yeah, Venice when it's not congested is a beautiful thing.
It's wonderful there. Really
so yeah,
wonderful.
I'm hoping for that myself. But everybody, please check Kathie out online. Where can they find you on Facebook and Instagram?
Facebook, Kathie George / Water Media Workshops.
Okay.
We also have a Journey Workshops with Kathie George page. It's a private group, but I do admit other members. Instagram, again, is Kathie _ George.
Okay, great. And we'll include links to that in the email.
Okay.
So that for people who are interested in looking for Kathie, and I encourage you to do so. Your classes are always fun, and you mix it up, which is really fun, it's never dull, there's a lot to be said for that. I can't thank you enough for your willingness to participate in the gift of watercolor magic. This is I think, going to be a great program for everyone. And I personally really enjoyed spending time with you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay, everybody, signing off, and please check out Kathie on social media and on her website. And thanks again for tuning in.